we've been learning that there are two kinds of vows which a husband can revoke if he hears his wife speaking them. One type of vow is a vow of inui nefesh. It's afflicting the soul, something to do with self-denial. He can revoke those. And the second type of vow are vows that concern the relationship between him and her, the relationship between husband and wife. So those are the two categories. And the first three Mishnayot of the chapter explore examples of those categories. And now, as we jump into the fourth Mishnah, we're going to jump into an example which just bursts out of those categories completely. And then we'll move into questions of perception and knowledge and boundary cases. But let's just start with let's jump out of the framework for a sec. Hunam she'eni oseh al pi abba. Hunam, that I do anything for father. This says the Mishnah is al pi abba. So I'm not sure whether this is for father or on father's instruction. And the commentators aren't very clear and the translations aren't very clear, but it's something to do with either I do something for father or on his instructions. Anyway, clearly this is something of benefit for Abba, for father. And it could be the same with other members of the family. She might say, Al pi avicha, for your father, classic, kind of you, my father, your father issue in a marriage. Al pi achai, for my brothers. Al pi achecha, for your brothers. All of these cases, a not yachol lafer, he cannot revoke. He cannot revoke because it's not an issue between husband and wife, and it's not an issue of self-preservation, self-affliction either. This is just purely interpersonal relationships. So he can't revoke these. Rabbi Akiva Omer, yafer. Sorry. She'eni osa al picha. What if she swears that she won't do anything al picha for you? In other words, she swears that the work of her hands is forbidden to her husband. So now we're getting into the marital relationship. And the Mishnah still rules the Mishnah rules differently. When she's talking about her father and her brothers, the Mishnah rules no yachol hafer, he cannot revoke. But now when she makes this vow about the if you like, the essence of a marriage, the Mishnah rules no sarich lahafer. He doesn't need to revoke. There's something about this vow. A wife promises not to do anything for her husband. There's something about this vow which somehow doesn't seem to need revoking. And I just want to remind you that when we looked at the Mishnah in Ketubot, in the 5th chapter of Ketubot, let's try and just refresh our minds here, if I can get it to come up on the screen, that there are certain things that a wife does for her husband, and he supports her in returns. In other words, she gives him the work of her hands, and he supports her in return. And the Mishnah, it's the 9th Mishnah, actually, of the 5th chapter of Ketubot, actually defines how much work she does for him. And we said, Mishkal Chamesh Slaim Shti B'Yehuda, for example, the weight of 5 sellers of warp in Judea, which amounts to 10 sellers in Galilee. This is all her weaving. There's a whole discussion as to what a wife does for a husband. But let's just come back now to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yafer Shema Tadif, Alav Yoter Mina Ra'uila. Rabbi Akiva says he should revoke lest she make more than is fitting for him. And I think we're seeing from Rabbi Akiva why the first opinion in the Mishnah is no revocation is necessary. Because the assumption of the Mishnah seems to be this work of her hands, it already belongs to her husband. So it's not her property. So she doesn't have any ability to make an oath that her husband can't enjoy it, it's already his. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva comes in and says, well, okay, maybe he needs to revoke it because maybe she'll make more than the minimum quantity. And then, of course, it's hers and she can make an oath about it. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri has a completely different take, by the way. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Yafer, Shem Yeragashena, Uteh Asurah Zoro. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, yeah, he should revoke it. Maybe he'll divorce her. If he divorces her without revoking it, then, of course, the oath still stands. And, of course, he can't revoke it after divorce because he's no longer her husband. And in that case, so what's the downside? Well, in that case, she can't come back to him. She swore not to get benefit from him, not to give benefit from him, so they can't get back together again. And by the way, one of the assumptions of the Mishnah is always that if a divorce happens, some kind of reunion should be possible. So that's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's reasoning for asking the husband to divorce, even though, according to the first opinion in the Mishnah, there's no need for him to do so. Asking him to revoke, even though there's no need to do so. Let's keep going. Let's get into questions of understanding. His wife vowed, and he thought his daughter had vowed. Remember, he can revoke the vows of both his wife and his daughter. His daughter vowed, but he thought his wife had vowed. She vowed the vow of a Nazir. Maybe she vowed the vow of a Nazir not to drink wine. And he thought that she'd vowed by a korban. She said, korban if I drink any wine, or korban is this wine to me. So both vows stop her from drinking wine, but they're different vows. Nadrava korban nadraba nazir. Maybe it goes their way around. Maybe she vowed by korban, and he thought she'd she'd taken a vow of nazirut. Maybe she forswore figs, and he thought she'd forsworn grapes, or the other way around. She forswore grapes, and he thought she meant figs. Interestingly, the Mishnah takes the trouble to list out all of these different examples of misunderstanding. But in all of them, the halakha is exactly the same. He has to revoke again, i.e. his original revocation is no good. When he revokes, he has to have the correct understanding of the vow and of what was vowed about and of who vowed, by the way. It applies to a confusion on the person, a confusion on the object, and a confusion on the type of vow. These are essentially the three archetypal categories that the Mishnah brings. And if there's confusion about any one of these, person, the type of vow, or the object, the revocation is no good. He has to do it again. What about partial revocation? Amra kunam tenim v'anamin eilu she'eni to'emet. She says, kunam, these figs and grapes, which I taste, or which I will not taste. Kiyem ala tenim, he confirmed the figs. Kulam kiyem, all of it is confirmed. And we've already learned, by the way, that if you release part of a vow, you release all of it. That's the view of Rabbi Akiva earlier up in the Nedarim. But here the Mishnah seems to be saying that if you confirm a vow, partially confirm a vow, it's all confirmed. Maybe somehow the act of revocation is different from the act of confirmation. And we'll see it doesn't work the other way. Hefer latzanim eno mufar ad sheyafer af la'anavim. If you revoke the figs, the vow isn't revoked unless he revokes the grapes too. Somehow when we're revoking, it seems, according to the opinion in this Mishnah, as if we need to revoke the whole vow. So we seem to be arguing with Rabbi Akiva, who holds that partial revocation works. And if she says, Kunam se'enim she'eni to'emet, vanavim she'eni to'emet, what if she actually makes two explicit vows? Elu shnei nedarim. If she says, kunam, the figs that I taste, and these grapes that I taste, these are two distinct vows. So in that case, he would need to make two distinct revocations or confirmations.